Okay, hello everybody and welcome. In this episode, that's funny to think of it as an episode, I'm going to be responding to your request to talk about trust. And thank you to those of you who submitted specific questions and who voted those up. And what I did with your questions is I organized them into 3 different categories. The first category are, there's 3 questions that I'm not actually going to address, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what they are and why. Then there's a whole section where I'll tell you what I want you to know about what I've learned about trust. Started studying men in 1991, and then everything they said about women had me pay more attention to women, and then that evolved into paying attention to how do we have partnership between us, between men and women and women and women and men and just humans in general. So the things I'm going to talk about actually apply in relationships of all contexts, including with children, for example. It's normally referred to as children. I call them young people. So I'll do an overview of what I want you to know about trust and tell you the questions that directly applies to. And I'll talk about how to establish and rebuild trust. I'm going to give you some simple principles to work with. And, oh, wow. I just realized one other thing I had to write down about that. I don't want to forget because it will tear down trust so quickly. Sorry for wobbling the camera. And then I have 2 questions that everything I've said before applies to, but then they take it into a different level. So for example, it's going to take a while to build up to answering the question, how do I trust that my husband won't leave me? And how do I trust that there's the right partner for me out there? So that's going to come at the very end. So we're just going to execute this plan right now. So this is what I won't be addressing. There was a question, is an avoidant attachment spouse ever able to trust anyone? I'm not an expert on attachment styles, so can't answer the question. The next one is, how can I tell the difference between a red flag in someone or if it's my own trauma response? So I'm also not an expert on trauma responses. And red flag is interesting. I talk about things to watch out for that are to have an important critical foundation for a lasting relationship. I talk about that in Dating with the Distinctions, but I'm not an expert on trauma response. I will tell you that I practice what a friend of mine named self-cleaning oven. So when I am upset, when I am reactive, if you will, so there's like the feeling in my body and my mind is going in a lot of different directions and I may have emotions coming up, I search for what's mine. So what is mine before I interact with other people about what seems to be theirs. So I go look to see if there's anything that got hooked into from my past, or a belief or an expectation that I have, or did my feelings get hurt? And did they actually do what I think they did? Maybe it just seems like they did that. So I will clean out what I can before I bring to other people, this is what it seems like you did, or what you meant, or what you intended. Is that true? And then listen and verify and clarify. Another thing I won't be able to address because there's just not enough information to advise it well, which is, do I need to trust myself more, or is there something I need to do with my partner? So Tyler, who brings all this stuff to you on social media, did a poll of people who, do they trust themselves and do they trust other people, and was surprised that 80% of people said no in both categories. And so that might lead to maybe we need to trust ourselves more. But after you hear what I had to say about trust, I wasn't surprised by the 80%. Given how as human beings we want to relate to trust versus what's really happening with trust, it's not a surprise to me that we learn to mistrust and we have so many disappointments. So I'm going to do something here. I do much better if I hide my self-view, then I am not self-conscious. Okay, so this is what I want you to know about trust, and it will directly relate to these questions. One is, where do I draw the line of people lying to me and people being imperfect, and how do I know? If every person has let you down since birth and you're 60, can you trust anyone? And what's it like? How to tell mistrust from the past is projecting compared to present instinct. The second part of that I don't actually understand, but how do you tell mistrust from the past is projecting? Probably often, if not always, is. So it's a good thing to restore yourself from that. And this conversation can help you restore yourself from that. Another question is, how do you trust someone after so many people have broken your trust? So I don't think anyone's really going to like what I have to say about trust, but that doesn't mean it won't set you free. It can set you free, and it can have you be effective, and it can have you live your life more confidently and more with more real certainty, not false certainty, and make better decisions and approach things in a way where trust could get built. Okay, so so I think you won't like this. I still think it's really useful because I didn't like it, but it's helped me to create a life that I love and to be in love with people, both romantically and not. So in my observation of how people relate to trust is, and this is at the heart of all our difficulties, is that we have this desire, this longing, and it's not just female, by the way, it's men, women, young people. We have this longing to be able to just have what I refer to as blanket trust, like widespread trust, absolute trust. We want to just be able to trust. Like, wouldn't it just be lovely if you could trust people? Wouldn't it be lovely if you could trust women, trust men, trust parents, trust governments, trust? Wouldn't that just be lovely? And we want to just be able to trust. We want to be able to have faith that what we're interacting with is real. But those are contradictory. Our desire for blanket trust, absolute trust, being granted to us or granted to others, involves not paying attention to what's real. And so when I interact with trust, I involve reality every time. And I'll get to that part. So what normally happens, and I just invite you to just check and see where the shoe fits. I'm not going to tell you what you want me to tell you about how you can come to trust other people in the way that most human beings want. I'm not going to tell you that. So if you let go of that, then you may be able to let this in, and it can set you up to be successful. So just try this on, and I'm going to read it from my notes because I don't want to miss anything. So just try on to what degree you want to have just this absolute trust, blanket trust, that someone will do the right thing. If only we could trust people to do the right thing. Or if only we could trust people to do what they should do. And if you interact with what they should do, well, how do you know what they should do? often it goes back to the right thing, or the answer will be what's obvious. It's obvious what people should do. In every situation, it's obvious what people should do. And that's the first thing I'd like you to question is obviousness. If the same thing were obvious to all of us, we wouldn't have this trouble because people do what's obvious to them to do. What's obvious to us is something we don't question. We just do it. But in my work in this area, we've identified at least 6 different, you could call them first place motivations and ways of measuring life. Like, what is the point of life? We found 6 different ways that people would articulate, well, obviously, the point of life is what you leave behind. Obviously, the point of life is, what did you learn? Obviously, the point of life is, how did you grow? Who did you become as a human being? Obviously, the point of life is the people you share it with. Obviously, the point of life is to enjoy it and find joy in it everywhere you can and bring joy to other people. Obviously, the point of life is to express yourself. Do you know those things that you carry within you that need to be externalized or physicalized or, written into a book or spoken? Obviously, the point of life is to express yourself. Now, you can see these are 6 very different obviousnesses, and they're what we call your hidden dominant drivers. So they're what's behind what you're driven to do. They're the hidden why of what's behind what we're driven to do. And when we can uncover what's hidden and uncover what's hidden in other people, we can see why our obviousnesses have been causing conflict, causing disappointment, causing heartbreak, having people be hurt. Like, obviously, the point of a marriage, point of a relationship is to be together, to share your life, to witness each other's life, and to do life together. Obviously, someone who thinks that getting in a relationship with someone to whom the point of life is what you leave behind, and that means you go wherever you need to go and do whatever you need to do to build the legacy that you're compelled to build. The person who thinks it's obvious it's how much time you spend together is going to be really hurt by how many times that building person chooses not spending time together, chooses what they think is obvious for them that they do. That's just one example. So if you want to learn more about that, it's called Your Hidden Dominant Drivers. You can find it in the shop section of AlisonArmstrong.com. It can clear up so much stuff, and it can help you make better choices in who you choose to relate to in different ways. For example, in business, people in business tend to hire people to help them build the business who are experts and know a lot. But people who know a lot are driven to know a lot. They're driven to learn, which they're often not driven to build. So they don't help people build. They just have a lot of information. So just something for you to look at. And when we try to trust somebody to do what's obvious, when we have different things that create obviousness, which means we don't question them because they're obvious, that's going to have us feel like trust was broken when the trust was falsely given. It was a trust that you're going to do what I see to do. And that would be foolish. So another word that you could use in this realm, another word you could apply to this in this realm. Hold on just 1 second. We have a normal life showing up. Hi, honey, I figured it out. I'm going to be able to take care of it. I tried texting you.
Oh.
But I got it covered. Thank you. Mwah. Thanks so much, sweetie. Good night, honey.
Keep in touch.
Oh, thanks. Okay, see you tomorrow. Okay, welcome to my life. Francis, that's Dan. When you met Dan, we lived more than 200 miles apart. Now we live 90 footsteps apart, and I'm baking him a cake. But I put it in the oven in the long time, and he was gonna come get it out, but I jerry-rigged it, so it'll be okay until we're done at the top of the hour. Okay, welcome to my normal life. What kind of cake? It's lemon blueberry cake, or blueberry lemon cake, because the cake's really lemon, but there's blueberries. Okay, yay for grain-free baking. One of my passions. Oh, it is one of my passions. Interesting. Mostly just because Dan loves to eat them so much. He makes it worth it. Okay, so another word to apply to this is expectations. That we want to trust people to meet our expectations. And this is something that we talk about in Lux. We talk about it in Understanding Men. We talk about it in something called Critical Missing Pieces, which is one of our graduate courses. Expectations cause more mischief than anything I've ever encountered between all people. And you can tell when something would fall into the category of expectation. And this is one of the topics in Couples Connecting Through Conflict, which starts tomorrow night. It's one of the topics, what to do with expectations. Because expectations by their nature are things we think people should do. They should already do them or already have done them. We shouldn't have to ask for them. We don't have to earn them or do anything to get them. We already do. That's why we expect them. And they're often not articulated, or if they are, they're articulated as a demand. Why didn't you do that? They're not expressed in a way with enough detail for someone to know what it would look like to have done that and fulfill that for you. They're usually not done with us. They're not, we don't tell people what it would provide for us, which is one of the things that make it worth it for people to do things for us. And we usually don't ask if they agree to do that. Expectations aren't agreed to. Expectations people are held to account for when they haven't agreed to them. And just notice how irritating that is when someone holds you to account for something that you didn't agree to do. It's really upsetting for everybody. And we also won't ask the critical question that we pay attention to in our curriculum, which is, if you're willing to do this for me, what do you need from me in order to provide that? So we're always looking for what's my part, hoping to have a part, because then we can cause it to turn out. So there are many places you'll encounter that, and it's a very grown-up thing to engage in. And then we also, expectations, people should just do it, and they're supposed to do it. So why do I have to appreciate them for doing what they ought to have done? And so we don't. And appreciation is pretty simple. Anything you appreciate, you're going to get more of. And we have to learn how to appreciate in other people's currencies, how they experience appreciation. If you want to know more about that, the appreciation equation is one of the things that's on our website as well. It's an audio recording. So if you look at this, just wanting to have blanket trust or absolute trust, or be able to trust that people should do what you see there is to do, that people should do the right thing. You might flip it on yourself and notice that even when we know what we should do and what would be the right thing, that doesn't make us trustworthy. That doesn't make us count onable for doing it, because often we need some kind of support. We need some kind of structure, or reminder, or accountability to somebody, or even something we would call hold space. I used to write a lot of articles, and if I had to sit down and write an article, I would wander off and maybe bake a cake, but I would ask somebody, one of my coworkers, to be on the phone with me, like from another state, to be on the phone with me, be on mute on their side, do whatever they want to do on their side. They could bake a cake, but then they're holding space for me to focus and write an article. And because they were doing it, I could keep myself in front of my computer and write it. So what if we just all need support, and offering it and accepting it is a smart thing to do, and it can have us end up becoming more trustworthy because we are in reality delivering on more of the things that we said we would do. In reality, we are more congruent with what we say matters to us. And maybe we just need a little support to do that. So I'm just going to put that in your space to notice, do you ask for, do you accept, do you offer support? Or do you think there's certain kinds of support that are obviously justified and other kinds of support? What, a reminder? Aren't you grown up? Aren't you like, hello, an adult? You need a reminder to do that? Well, maybe a reminder is a legitimate form of support. So now I'm going to go into the how to establish and rebuild trust. And it's going to start with, you always complete the sentence. Okay, so don't ever end it with like, how can I trust you? Always finish the sentence. Could be something like, what do we need to do so that I can trust you to pick the kids up every weekday at 3 o'clock? What do I need to do to build that trustworthiness? What do you need from me? It's something that would make a difference in my life to be able to entrust you with and count on you to do. And you can even start with doing like an inventory and notice, like for yourself, what can I be trusted for? What do I generate reliably? It's part of who I am. It would be a huge exception for me to not do it. The moment I knew I couldn't do it, I would communicate and make other arrangements. I'd never leave someone high and dry. What can I be trusted? What have I demonstrated trustworthiness? Notice that term, trustworthiness, means you have earned it. So this is where you're paying attention to reality. And so what can I be trusted for? And what can the people in my life be trusted for? What is their evidence of their reliability that they keep generating that? And do they generate it entirely on their own? That's something awesome to appreciate. And, or do they need some kind of support from me? And if I'm trustworthy for my part, they're trustworthy for theirs. And if I'm not, if I don't deliver, they don't deliver. Oh, we can trust this works out when we both do our parts, and it won't when we don't. Interesting. There's also, if you're paying attention to reality and you want to interact with trust directly, you can trust people to do what they do. And we want to trust people to not do what they do. So we want to trust somebody who says that they're going to eat healthier, to only eat healthy foods. Well, like my husband, I could trust him to eat chocolate every day. In reality, he ate chocolate every day. And if I had wanted to trust him to not do that, if I tried to get him to promise to not do that, if I tried to enforce an expectation, chocolate is not a healthy food. You shouldn't be eating that. And I can't believe I can't trust you to not do that. We would have been miserable. I just trusted him to eat chocolate and kept searching for healthier chocolate for him to eat. That didn't wasn't something I could trust him for either. He would eat the chocolate I bought, but he'd also eat other chocolate. So if you look, like there are certain people in my life, I can trust them to lie. I can trust them to exaggerate. I can trust them to conceal. Concealment is a normal thing to trust human beings for. Lying is a normal thing to trust human beings for. So many of us really want to trust people to be honest and have an expectation that people be honest. And we're shocked and disappointed and hurt and disrespected and so upset when they're not honest. Well, I need honesty, so I did a whole study on honesty and lying. And lying is normal human behavior. Lying is normal. And we lie in so many ways. We lie by minimizing, we lie by distorting a bit, we lie by only showing the part we think will be attractive, we lie by just not saying anything. We lie, we accuse people of things like as a fight method to throw them off the scent, because they're getting too close. We lie with our facial expressions, with our body language. So funny, have you even seen a horse lie? We lie to get other people to reduce their pressure or go away. Horses will lie. They can lie to have human beings reduce their pressure. My horse did that when she was little. She was like a year old and she lied to me. It was awesome to learn that. Oh my gosh. What if lying wasn't something that had us think we can't trust people? Pay attention to what can you always trust somebody to lie about. We encourage lying by being upset about the truth. How do I look in these pants? Do you want an honest answer? Not usually. What we really meant was, could you please tell me I look great in these pants? Could you please tell me I look awesome? If we were being more honest, we would not ask a dishonest question that we don't really want to hear the truth. So the question here, right? Where do I draw the line of people lying and being imperfect? Well, we're human beings are imperfect, and one of the things we do is lie. And if you treasure honesty, or if you're like I am a lover of truth, then it's something to be celebrated. And it's something to be safe for, and it's something you can't ever use against people. And we use people's truths against them. And that's why they stop telling them to us. Starting very, very young, children learn that's not a good thing to tell mom. So let's just not. So what else do I want you to know? Another thing I want you to know, so after you pay attention to what you can trust people to do, because there's evidence, they're doing it, what you can trust them to not do, because there's evidence they won't do that, no matter how many times they say they will, or promise or re-promise that they will, their track record is not good, so you can trust them to not do that. We're planning a trip that sounds really exciting, and our family members are saying yes. And Dan and I have been interacting about, okay, so how solid is that person's yes? And it's not like an accusation, it's just reality. It's just real. How solid is their yes? And then trusting that that's what we should plan on, is that degree. That person's yes is about 12%. That person's yes is 99%. That person's yes is 50-50, as Dan would say, 50-50. So trusting that instead of trying to trust what we want to trust. This is what's so hard to interact with, but I want to trust them to do that. But can I? And so much can be built once we start interacting with reality. And like I was imitating, a conversation before, I would I would like to be able to trust you to do this. It would make a huge difference in my life if I could count on you for this. Are you willing to be countable for this? Do you want to be countable for this? And what would you need to be countable for this? Okay, darn, see, I'm going over. I have to turn the buzzer off and take the cake out of the oven, but I'll be right back. So if you want to do something for the next like 40 seconds, start writing down what you'd like to be trustworthy for and what you'd like someone else to be trustworthy for. Okay, I'll be right back. Yay! They're beautiful because there's two of them because I make one for him and one for me. Yeah, I want to be at sacrifice. Okay, look and see what else I want to tell you. Yeah, so if you're going to establish trust, it's an interactive process. In our Smart Singles, we talk about what do you, and this goes to the other two questions that build on this. How do I trust my husband that he won't leave me? How do I trust that my husband won't leave me? How do I trust that there's a right partner for me out there? So the second question first, make a list. Your clarity matters hugely. So make a list of what you need to be able to trust them to generate being and what you need to be able to trust them to generate doing in order to be better off being with them. What makes them a right partner for you? So we apply questions like, I'd rather be alone than be with someone who wasn't this. I'd rather be alone than be with someone who didn't generate this kind of behavior, didn't relate to my family in this way, for example. I'd rather be alone. Or you can think of it as, okay, relationships take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of work, a lot of accommodation. What would have me be better off? What would be the qualities of the person that would have me be better off in relationship than the freedoms of being single? What would have me be better off without? I'd be better off without someone who's like that. So again, we're interacting with reality. And so the how do I trust that there's the right partner for me out there? I wouldn't recommend that you trust that. I recommend you be wide open to that, like that could happen, and be very careful to articulate what the right person would be and do, and then really confront, no, I'd rather be alone if they're not that way. So design a life for yourself that you wouldn't give up for just anybody. Be in love with your own life. So you wouldn't just give it up in order to couple, in order to bond with somebody. No, I'm not going to settle for less than this. I'd rather be alone than have less than this. Why? Because when I have less than this, I don't even like me, let alone them. I hate the person I turn into when I'm with someone who doesn't provide these things. It's very logical. It's very grown up. It's very direct. So you can't trust. You got to articulate, and you got to go looking, and you got to go sorting, and you got to express it and find out what people need from you to be that. Do they want to be that person? How do I trust that my husband won't leave me? This is another place where we want to have blanket trust. Till death do us part. That's what we want to trust. We made a vow till death do us part. We want to trust that we won't leave the other person no matter what. I don't subscribe to that. I made that vow and I lived up to that vow, and it worked very well raising a family. But at my age, I am not giving up that right. If I can't meet Dan's needs and he can't meet mine, and I need to meet his, for myself, I need to meet his, for himself, he needs to be able to meet mine. There's nothing worse than knowing you're not meeting your partner's needs. And we're going to be together as long as we can meet each other's needs, because we practice the other part, loving, honoring, and cherishing. And that's what often happens in too many relationships. The commitment to staying together no matter what, that isn't backed up by the commitment to loving, honoring, and cherishing each other, to meeting each other's needs. And what ends relationships is people's needs not being met and them losing confidence that they will be met. So the loss of confidence, confid, is what leads to infid. So when we lose confidence in our needs being met, we either give up on the need and become the person who we are without that need. Ooh, that can be ugly. Or we just naturally start looking for somebody else who will provide for the thing we need that we can't get. So that's why in the Queen's Code, for example, I think it's chapter 6. In chapter 6, the characters are encouraged to ask, what do you need from me that's you've given up on getting? Or what do you need from me that's too hard to get? Which means they're about to give up on getting. So these are very grown-up conversations to have to build that actual day-to-day experience. And this goes back to one of the first questions, how do I build trust in the day-to-day life with my boyfriend? Is you keep checking in with the other person. Is there anything you need? Are you getting what you need? How is that for you? How am I doing in that department? And we keep letting the other person know how they're doing that. So, and a heck of a lot of appreciation. Okay, I did fire hose anyway, didn't I? Francis is not. You've seen me do that before. Sometimes I can't help, but there's so much to say, and I've been working on this for 3 decades. And everybody's lives are at stake. All right. I for as much as everybody could hang in for this conversation, a grown-up conversation about trust, when what we really want to do is have a fairy tale kind of trust. We really, really, really do. But to have that, we have to squint. Yeah, everything's all right. And then, yeah, oh, he's perfect. He's just perfect. And then we have to keep squinting, which means we're going without what we need, and we become more and more miserable, less and less happy, less and less satisfied, less and less the best version of ourselves as we define it, not somebody else. And so I like this question. It's so worth engaging in, and it requires being awake. And it's good to start with yourself, right? When we can look at ourselves and what I can't be trusted for. I can't be trusted to manage my time perfectly. I may have a cake get done baking in the middle of an Instagram live. I would like to act like that's unusual. It's not unusual at all. I can be trusted for what Greg used to call putting 10 pounds in a 2-pound bag. I can be trusted to do that. All right, everyone. If you would like to, I think you can bring yourself off mute. If you'd like to come off mute and say good night or good morning, I'd be happy to do that. And then we're going to end for today. So.
Thank you, Alison.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Thanks for keeping me company. Bye.
Thanks, Allison.
Bye.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks everybody on Instagram.